I'm Luke Young, and this is Dragonheart.
Hello, welcome to Dragonheart, your weekly dose of what's good for you. And my goodness, haven't we got something good today as well? I mean, Neil, of course, joins me fresh from the fields. And also, we've got a very special, sorry if I insulted you there, Neil, but you know it was my intention. And we have a very special guest too, because we'll be chatting to Ian Herbert, author of this little beauty, Tinseltown, all about the takeover by Rob and Ryan. And you are going to naturally find lots of different things, as you all know, about Wrexham popping up. But this is the opposite of bandwagon jumping. I can assure you, Ian not only has the bona fides as a genuine Wrexham fan, but also, he's too modest to mention himself, but Sports Journalist of the Year 2022, anyone? This guy actually knows what he's about. So
just very kind of you, Mark. It's too kind.
Sorry, I'm only saying it because it's true. The key to good PR is there has to be something true behind it. So how are you both?
Really,
Mark. Yeah.
Yeah. Likewise. I mean, we were together a bit on Saturday lunchtime, Mark, and sort of wondering, I think, what the Grimsby game would hold, feeling a bit haunted by the fixture. And I don't know, I just thought the last couple of weeks just seems to have things seem to have turned, and we feel like we're a League Two ready club now, don't we? We sort of feel like it's our environment now. I don't know whether the Tranmere game was the kickstart or the Bradford game, but feeling good about that.
I disagree. League One's our environment. You'll see. I must admit, watching the highlights of League Two, I started thinking, I have a real lack of fear of what I'm seeing here, but that's just me being arrogant. And Neil, I mean, is there a pig showing season? Is there a good place to get pig oil from? These are the questions we should answer.
There is a great place to get pig oil from.
But you're not telling us.
The pig showing season is well and truly over now, especially with Matilda.
Yeah.
Because she's due to give birth any day now. So, yeah, definitely over.
We were excited on Saturday that Neil was showing us pictures of his heavily pregnant sow. It was a spectacular sight, I'm going to say. I couldn't concentrate in the second half after seeing that. But anyway.
Has she finally given birth, Neil? Or...
Pardon?
Is it a work in progress, or has she finally dropped?
Week today.
Okay, good.
As it dropped, I like that very much.
I think if it's a week today, you could sort of do it live on the next week's pod. Just a suggestion.
Neil,
that's
please.
On time, yeah.
Please, we got to do that. We got to get a GoPro, and we'll you can talk over your shoulder while delivering.
That's a better GoPro than Ben Foster, isn't it? For sure.
Yeah, exactly. Right, it's settled. Next week, live pig birthing. But this week we'll chat about Grimsby game, the women's game, and maybe a little bit of Tinseltown sprinkled in as well. So, welcome everyone to Dragonheart.
I'm Amy Davis, and this is Dragonheart.
Like I said, fabulous special guest that we've got, Ian. So thank you so much for joining us. We genuinely appreciate it. And, we will chat about the last weekends later on. But firstly, I've started Tinseltown. I'm loving it. I've got to say, it's an accurate, I think, telling, when there are so many unusual media narratives and cliches thrown in about it. It's nice to see a properly written and researched actual document, if you will. How did you first get into the project?
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, my family are from Chirk, and I've been watching the team since '78. And I suppose in the last maybe 10 years or so, I've perhaps ebbed and flowed in terms of watching the team. I mean, my job's writing about football games, and it isn't always Wrexham, unfortunately. So, there's been different times where I've not seen him as much, but I think it's always there in your heart, isn't it? It never leaves you, really. So, I think obviously there was a wish to try and write about all that had happened and to understand more about it, to try and get behind it a bit. I should say that I'm very grateful to Sean Harvey for meeting me early in that process and being willing to speak to me at great length about his perspective on that, and just as importantly to open doors for me to speak to other people. And obviously there've been some great conversations with Humphrey, with Fleur, with Yuan in the kit room, with Charles, on the side of the pitch, all that stuff. But Sean helped me reach people like Steve Horowitz, who from Inner Circle Sports in New York, who helped to sort of bring the deal about, who I loved spending time with. We met a couple of times in person, once in the Mice before the Boreham Wood game, which was great, and then a couple of times on Zoom. A guy called George Dewey, who's Ryan's business partner, who taught me through a bit more about the business side of it, Maximum Effort, his and Ryan's firm, and creative agency, whatever you want to call them, and the work that they do that I think perhaps people know a bit less about. But really, a lot of those doors were opened to me by Sean being willing to sort of see the value in the story being told. So, and then I suppose what then happened was, I mean, I only live in Manchester. I'm not far from town, but I then ended up, in town a lot, just to see people. And so often when you're a supporter who doesn't live in Wrexham or in the area, you just drop in off the A483, go to the Kairas, watch the game, home again. I've not really been in town properly for years, Mark, and I just met and just got to know some brilliant people, and I wanted to write about town as well, and just try and tell the story of how, there's always been brilliance there. There's always been great people there, people like yourselves, people like Joss at Wrexham Lager, people like Mark and and others. I could go on and on, but people who actually make the town work, and that was brilliant, and then that became part of the story.
It's interesting as well for me because, like I said, it does counter some of the sort of lazy media cliches. You see all these headlines. They've always got to put Hollywood. A number of times I hear, whether it's voiceovers on the highlights or whether it's an opposing side's commentator or a national radio commentator next to me in the press box, they've got to work in Hollywood ending at the end. And for me, it's got nothing to do with that sort of glitzy thing. It's more about what you're talking about. And certainly, I mean, massively, Rob's desire to support a working class community.
Yeah, that's right. And I think what's quite interesting is just the way that their kind of philanthropy works, in town, really. I mean, it's not a question of them putting loads of money into Wrexham, the town. It's certainly, there's obviously a lot, they put money into Wrexham FC and all the benefits that comes. But, I just think it's just interesting to see how, the fact that people are talking about us and the fact that the TV cameras are here and Americans and Canadians and Australians are here, it just makes people feel better about their place. It gives people a spring in their step, and in all parts of town, rich and poor, really. I mean, that's not to say there isn't some real struggle and some real problems, and a lot of that is to do with the fact that all that talk about levelling up and all this sort of stuff, it never really came, did it? It never really happened. All the promises that never happened, and councils, really, pared down to the bone, and all that stuff. Don't want to get too political here, but what was my thread? But I think it just shows. But people. It's the people, individuals, who really make the place work. And that's right. I've got back to my thread now. But I think what Rob and Ryan have done overall have just given people, and the Rob and Ryan effect has given people just a bit more love of the place, and it's reminded people what a great town Wrexham is.
Absolutely, and Neil, I know you would agree with that. you have always been very much a person who's been, representative of and connected to the community of fans, despite, being removed from. I mean, I should say, Ian, this is a man who used to commute to Wrexham games from Cornwall on a regular basis.
That's respect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And even now, from Whitchurch, where of course we all know there are no actual tarmac roads, so that in itself is a trek involving car and cart. But the sorry, Neil.
Sometimes pigs as well.
And pigs is absolutely, well, they were in the back of the cars, weren't they? But I mean, Neil, I mean that what Ian is saying rings very true to your and my vision of both the club and the positive that the takeover can do for it.
It does. I mean, there's always been a great. I mean, the fan base has always been pretty decent, even during our darkest days. And it was always a great fan base who got stuck in and supported the club during that time. And that's what I think Rob and Ryan have seen is what the fans did in our darkest days to save this club. And yes, they've been in and bought the club, but I don't think they've invested massively in the club. They bought the club, but just them being the owners has created the interest in the club. I have people in every day. I mean, as I say, I live in over the border in England. Every day I have people speak to me about Wrexham FC. People who, I don't know, but they see the memorabilia in the window, etc., etc. And they everybody wants to talk about Wrexham. And it's a lovely, lovely feeling, that even in the ground, when you're at the ground, you see all the families there, the different generation gap. Everybody's got a smile on their face. And it has brought that wonderful feeling back to Wrexham. I mean, it used to be a struggle to go to games years ago, but now it's just a lovely, lovely feeling to go to a packed out racecourse. Everybody's happy, everybody's smiling. We've got great staff there. We work with great people. And the fans have always been terrific. The fans have always been the heartbeat of the club, to get us through the darkest days. The fans were there to do that. And that's why I love that Rob and Ryan have seen that. And that's why they've come on board in Wrexham. Yes, it's created so much jealousy amongst other fans, and clubs, because they call it, oil money, but it's not. I mean, Ian may know this more than I do, but I can't see Rob and Ryan have invested millions and millions into the club. The club has generated its own funds from them being the owners of the club, really.
Yeah, I mean, you put it really well. You put it so well, and I do sort of think that there's a lot of sniffiness, isn't there? I mean, outside of Wrexham, other fans, and sort of how they sort of feel about it, but they don't really see it close up, do they? They don't really see close up some of the benefits. I mean, I think what strikes me about, I don't want to jump ahead, guys, in terms of, because this is not a big part of the chronology, but I do think there's a sort of an issue there about how, and a challenge there for us in Wrexham to sort of how the overall town benefits from what's happening at the racecourse. I mean, you sort of look at the retail centre's not what it might be, and I think you want more for that. You want more for the butcher's market, which I know is being refurbished. You want more for Hope Street. You want more kind of. I mean, the number of people who've said to me that Eagles Meadow is kind of not as really kind of slightly destroyed the kind of the retail experience and the shopping experience in the middle. So all these sort of things, but there does seem to, it's not very far, that drive over the humpback bridge over the railway and into town. It's not very far, but sometimes the two do seem quite a long way away. You go at the ground, you go to the Mice Gwyn, you go to the Plas Cork, you go to the game. So I think there's a challenge there for everyone to sort of, and particularly I suppose for the politicians and the councillors, to try and look at how they can seize that moment, overall economically, if you like, while we've got it. Because I mean, Rob and Ryan won't be here forever.
I think that'll come, Ian. I think as we get bigger and bigger, I think that'll come, and we have tourists coming to the town week in, week out now. So, and it's not just the town; it's a wider North Wales area that it's bringing. Was it the Welsh government came out and said last week it's actually put an extra £1 billion into the North Wales economy?
Yeah,
which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah,
as well,
totally.
though, like you're saying, Ian, that it feels to me like it's more. I don't mean this in a pejorative sense, but like opportunistic business men and women who are
Yeah,
actually taking advantage of that, and well done, good luck to them.
yeah,
Example, I mean, beautiful example of that. I mean, the Mice Gwyn, their program of events on home match mornings and
yeah.
afternoons is just brilliant and quite right. But it feels to me like it's people. Like I said, I wasn't trying to use opportunistic in a negative sense at all. I'm praising them, but it's people with
Yeah.
the nous and the initiative and drive to do that.
I think
But,
it's a great
maybe
example. Yeah, yeah. Because I mean,
maybe
actually,
town
you
needs
look
to
at the
do that.
Mice
Yeah,
this season compared with last season. I mean, last season there was the Wrexham Lager kind of trailer, and we obviously queue up for Wrexham Lager. You get your pint very quickly, but now there's certainly the last few weekends you've got 3 or 4 places to get your beer from.
Yeah.
I think the Wrexham Lager actually sold out before the not the Grimsby game, the game before, which I actually went to. I can't remember who we played now. Anyway,
in the
pardon?
heat, Doncaster.
Exactly, the Doncaster game. So, but there's now, so that's expanded out even in season to season. You've got a number of places you can get your beer. There's a Chevron clothing trailer there. Tim Steele's Chevron clothing. There's some really good merchandise there. And it's like that seems to be like a little microcosm of exactly what you say, that people, capitalizing, seeing the opportunities there really, and fantastic. And the Mice itself, the very fact it's there, and it's that decision to make it into the place it is really has been born of what's happened across the road at the ground.
But I think, like I said, maybe relying on entrepreneurs like that boost the town. There's no question there's a more positive air around town, but
yeah,
it maybe be good if, and like you say, I mean, the council's cut to the bone, but if there could be some form of unified attempt in the town to make that link shorter, if you like, between the stadium and the, actually get town itself in a regulated way to take more advantage of the football club's high profile, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, it does. The two can seem quite a long way away at times, can't they? Really, But I mean, I guess that just might take some time. But in terms, I kind of met Leslie Griffiths a few times. I've met Mark Jones a few times. Different sides of a political divide there, but just very dynamic people who really know town absolutely inside out, and who do great work. And I think that doesn't always come across perhaps in this idea that it's all about Rob and Ryan. So I think there was just, that's the bit that surprised me, how much of that there was to tell in the book, really.
I changing tack. I was lucky enough to bump into Megan Feringa at the women's game, and she's the Daily Mail's female football female football correspondent. By coincidence, she supports Wrexham, and she has been successful, she was telling me, in getting to go to a lot of Wrexham games when they discuss where she's going to go on the weekend, for the simple reason that the Mirror can't get enough of Ryan Reynolds, and therefore they're happy for her to come to Wrexham rather than maybe a Super League game. But while she clearly sees it for what it is, there's a sort of element in national media of a sort of cartoonish view of it. I mean, I've seen both sides of this personally with the Boreham Woods game. Sky News asked me to talk, and they got it. They were really asking the right questions about the actual project. But then we had how can I put this? A certain morning TV program that was just had cheerleaders and all sorts.
No, people were talking to me about that. I'd not seen it, but around that weekend of the Boreham Wood game, I think that must have happened midweek, and they were still talking about it on the weekend. Yeah.
I've recorded it, and I've not been able to bring myself to see it yet. I just feel it's going to be horrible, but it's still sitting there waiting to be watched. Do you find that, just in general, is there, there seems to be a dichotomy between the way different media outlets and on a national level actually want to see this story? Yeah,
I mean, I think it is very, I think in terms of national media, it is it is a very simplistic, it is. There's no doubt about it. I mean, there's a very simplistic sort of approach to it. I think in terms of like, you're trying to grab people's attention. There's a million stories they could read in all various media. And Rob and Ryan are the kind of they're the sort of the way into it in some respects. And I've seen stories about all kinds of teams, other National League teams, and it's really written with a Rob and Ryan headline on it, because that's the way of getting people in to talk about other teams, So I think that is just the nature of media, really. You're just trying to draw people in. And I don't know, I think that's what's been great about the book, really. There has been a sort of chance to just talk in a lot more detail and just try and understand a bit more about the nuts and bolts of it all. But I guess really overall, I'm kind of getting the impression that there is a bit of fatigue about the whole story from some people in the UK, but the US, I think, seems to be the bit that's surprised everyone. I really get the feeling it surprised Rob and Ryan a lot as well, just about the level of interest from the US in what our town constitutes. So, but yeah, I think there can be a bit of cartoonishness about it at times, for sure.
Well, Neil, I mean, we're lucky, aren't we? Sorry,
Mark. Go on. Sorry.
We're lucky, Neil, to experience the enthusiasm in American and Canadian and Australian, New Zealand, the international fans at first hand. It's fantastic, isn't it?
There are still fans complaining about it, but I think it's great for the club. It's great for the community. Who doesn't want extra fans following your football club? I can't understand just because people can't get tickets, but hey, we're all fans at the end of the day. You can't get to a game, listen to us on the, online. I mean, I love the enthusiasm of the American fans and how much they've got, engrossed in the football club and the community, and how they love coming over to Wrexham. I think it's fantastic, and I think that itself is a fantastic story. That they feel so welcomed in Wrexham and feel so at home at Wrexham. But the majority we hear from, Mark, say, yes, they've watched the documentary, but the likes of yourself and the team that does all the commentary have actually brought them into and felt more part of the club than just watching the documentary. And I think it's a lovely feeling to have, and to the people who come and see you, Mark, in the commentary box and the Americans is just a great story. And I think perhaps if they do another documentary, they're missing that little bit, and I think that'd be great for other people to see, around the world.
I think that it's interesting you bring up the women's team though, because I think that I had a really good sort of chat with Gemma Owen for the part of the book that talks about that team. And I think what's interesting about that side of it is that it didn't really require an awful lot of investment in the women's team to really take them onto another level and see them promoted through that playoff, and to now find them up against Cardiff, Swansea, Aberystwyth, with all these sides. But I mean, it was just a question of making them feel cared for a bit more, and actually giving them just the basics of not having to pay their own travel. And it was just it didn't really take an awful lot. And I think Gemma tells a great story about a home game. I think it was against Llandudno in the I think it was last season. And word gets out that Rob's at the ground, and suddenly loads of people start coming through just by word of mouth, really. And then that obviously led into the weekend where we had 9,500 watching him play Connor Ski. But it was soft touch stuff, really. It didn't require an awful lot of investment, and it wasn't crass. It didn't take a lot. And some of the great stories, and I think that's the other part. Neil mentioned before about all the different sorts of people you encounter at the racecourse, and I think that was one of the beauties of and the joys of writing the book, was that you ended up with there were just people who kind of almost like came into the manuscript, came into the story, like Gemma, Maxine Hughes, Leslie, who I mentioned, Fleur, obviously. Lily Jones. Just it became a story about not just blokes like us, and that wasn't forced. That just there are just an awful lot of women who are part of that story, and that's just a great thing to be able to tell. You feel like you're writing about something which is quite progressive and modern and inclusive, really.
Yeah, exactly. So, I need to just say, Neil, I'd like to present you with the plug of the season for 3 times bringing up our commentary in one answer. I thought that was utterly magnificent. So very well done to you there. And of course, everyone, you can join Neil and I live from Edgeley Park from about 2:30 on Saturday. Yeah, but it's just it is such a lovely human story on a human level, and as you know, Neil, that's the thing that we kept being told by the international fans. They got an interest through the Welcome to Wrexham show. Those who wanted to continue that, we were the only game in town at the time, and luckily our style of commentary, I think, suits people who are looking for a community-based story, which is what the show was. But no, it's been a remarkable experience, and I just have to ask you, Ian. I don't wish to put you on the spot. When people do this to me, I freeze and think I can't think of an example. But so you can take this broadly if you wish. But in the course of researching and writing the book, was there anything that really surprised you?
That's a good question.
If not, then it's a bad question.
No, there was a lot that surprised me. Yeah, there was a lot that surprised me. You know what? I didn't really quite understand the story of Wrexham Lager. I didn't understand the story of how, they joined up with Bootlegger. Joss at Wrexham Lager had the kind of presence of mind to involve Bootlegger. They launched the Bootlegger Lager. Then it was lockdown. And then suddenly they decide to start selling, really, with Joss an important part of it, to sell direct. And they literally were overwhelmed with orders. They didn't even have the means of distribution. So I think that was that was a real surprise to me. I think it was, perhaps, because it's a story outside of the club, maybe it's sort of rather fitting in some respects. I didn't really understand a lot about Maximum Effort, I should say. I don't know whether, listeners, viewers follow that, but that really surprised me. I didn't really know much about George, for example, and just about the way they do, the E4 Williams trailers, film, and the Fergie film, and the FIFA EA Sports film, just like the actual creative engine behind all that. I thought that was really interesting, and just in a very important part of how all that works, of how the whole Wrexham story had worked.
Well, that's something that comes across really well, the nitty gritty and detail, as well as the flowing narrative in Tinseltown. And well, all I can say is it's available from all good bookstores, but it's also available from bad bookstores. It doesn't matter which bookstore you get it from; it's still the same text.
Good or bad, yeah.
Absolutely. I never understood that phrase, good bookstores.
I should say that there's a really great bookshop in Oswald Street, which is called Booker. Don't know if you guys have come across that place, but it's an indie bookstore, BOOKA, and I signed a load of books in there because it's my favourite bookshop in the world. And if you're going to buy any copies of Tinseltown, I haven't got a plug to hand, but that's a good place because they've got some great stuff on their website and in the store.
There we are. Well, that's brilliant. Well, we'll be back after this, and we'll cling on to Ian so we can actually talk about what was going on at the weekend at the club.
I'm Steve Dale, and this is Dragonheart.
Well, it's fortunate for us three because we now get to talk about the most important or most impressive performance, rather, of the season so far, I think. Grimsby Town on Saturday. We were all there, and I'm sure we all laughed our heads off. It was terrific, that, wasn't it?
I mean, it was a haunting beforehand, wasn't it? Because it was just, it just felt like there was, I don't know, there was some kind of retribution was required, wasn't it? Really, and it was, it just got better and better. I don't know what you guys thought. I just thought second half was even better. Really, great game.
yeah, our best performance of the season. Like a lot of people, I think I was a bit anxious before the game because Grimsby had a very good team. I felt that we owed them one from that semi-final playoff where they beat us 5-4. So yeah, I really wasn't looking forward to the game, but so impressed with Wrexham on Saturday, as Mark said. I think it was our most impressive game of the season. Complete game, 90 minutes non-stop, and it could have been 5-6-0 easily.
Well, looking at the after the game when I was packing up, the BBC reporter, the local reporter from Grimsby, who I recognised him, but his name I didn't recognise him. I'm sure he's an ex-pro. He said two things to me. One is, "Oh well, you should be going up this season," and then the second thing, which I thought was quite telling, especially considering that Grimsby are a decent team, was none of the Grimsby players would get into your team. And I thought that was, for somebody who knew what he was talking about, I thought that was quite a telling comment. But we really looked impressive, didn't we?
I just think McLean, to me, seemed like from the minute he first came on against Bradford, it was the first time I'd sort of seen him, really. He just looked like he is going to be a real player for us. I mean, he just brings that physicality. He just brings that that just sense of knowledge, that kind of, he knows what the combination play can be like with. I could just see a lot of combination play between him, Elliot Lee, maybe, and they were already doing a bit of that on Saturday. And he just seems to be such a physical strength, such a physical force, but just got such a brain on him, really. And that to me was a massive difference. I liked first half, a couple of really beautiful goals, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of a similar nature. So brilliant. And then second half, Stephen Fletcher, I just thought, again, players I've not really paid that much attention to over the years, but I just thought, what a performance. What those little tricks and the overhead, and again, Mullin and Fletcher, that just feels to me like, such a combination. I don't know what your take is on how fit he'll be or when he might be ready for a full 90 minutes, but that just seems like a real combination to me. A couple of players who really know the game, and they really see they really see the pictures. They really see where they need to be and where the opportunities are going to present themselves.
Yeah, I mean, when Fletcher came on, he really was a catalyst as well to the real Harlem Globetrotters stuff that we were playing. But like you say, it's about good players who have good groundings at a high level, who know what runs, what moves are possible, what good players are likely to do, where space will be. I saw Andy Morrell afterwards, didn't we, Neil? And I was saying to him, it reminded me of when Glenn Little would come on late on when Morrell was manager, and you could just see players wanted to play with him and combine with him because he would make these intelligent runs that made the next pass easy. And you just see them all gravitating towards him and looking to combine. And Fletcher reminds me a little bit of that. It's just, Elliot Lee's like, oh, I can play with my friend now, and so back.
Yeah. Oh, you were talking before about the surprising things, the things that certainly personally I didn't really expect. And, I actually didn't really foresee that we would have these signings, that would, Boyle, who I think is great, Will Boyle, I think is great, McLean and Fletcher. I sort of thought that I had this kind of idea, because partly speaking to Les Reed, at some length for the book already, that we kind of bought a team that was kind of League Two ready, really. And obviously there was then that MK Dons game, which I saw on the stream. I was abroad at the time with work, and it was such a jolt to the system, really, that game. It just made you think, have we underestimated this? So I actually didn't anticipate we were going to have these new players who are taking us on to another level again. I'm not actually sure what your take is on whether that is a response to events or whether that was always going to happen. But they have taken us to another level, I think.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of circumstantial evidence to suggest it was a reaction to that start of the season.
That's interesting.
Like
That's interesting.
At least three. Like we got 3 unregistered players who I suspect it wasn't the plan. Certainly Waters, who starts the first game of the season, to have them unregistered. 6 games in.
I think you and I were talking about this on Saturday. I mean, Waters is a real surprise because I sort of anticipated him being the kind of the player who was almost sort of there in readiness for League Two. We didn't really need him that much, but I mean, suddenly he's out the picture. Incredible, really.
I mean, part of the complication for him, of course, Neil, is that Bickerstaff has grasped his opportunity with both hands when that was definitely the idea to loan him out, isn't it?
Yeah, Bickerstaff for me, he's impressed me, young lad. He came up first time I saw him was Altrincham away last year in the Coca whatever it was, the Silly Cup.
Yeah, FA
played
Trophy,
it, and they beat us. But he's impressed me with his skill, his maturity for his age, and I think he's got a great teacher in Mullin, hasn't he? And we certainly missed Mullin in the first couple of games, but myself and you, Mark, we've said, haven't we? I think the big problem at the beginning of the season was lack of match practice for the team, and we've all been to America, got back, and you feel lousy for 3 or 4 days, and we were only back for a week, and we started the season, so not good timing. Yes, we need to get out to America for the American fans, but I think that was our problem. I think we already had a League Two squad already there, the way we played last year, and I mean, we don't need to sell this to these players. They see what's happening at Wrexham, and they're all happy to come to Wrexham because of the story, because of the vision of the club, and obviously Rob and Ryan. But that's why a lot of these players are coming. They see what's going on there. They see, it's all over the media everywhere. Wherever you go, it's all about Wrexham. So there's not much selling to do on these players, and for them to come in and play for Wrexham, all three of them added a new dimension. And I thought Fletcher on Saturday, just second half, we go a bit quieter, but we dominated that game for 90 minutes on Saturday. Yes, Grimsby had a few times where they'd pass it intricately between them along the back four, but they couldn't penetrate our defence, and they ran out of ideas and went for the long ball and didn't trouble Howard in the goal very little. But Fletcher is a different one again. As you say, Ian, I think Fletcher and Mullen together on the pitch I can't wait to see, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
And
great to see Mark Howard, though, isn't it? The way he's come sort of back into play, and I just think he's been great, hasn't he? A real player, and I mean that's just kind of it's justified in a sense that I don't know. There's something sort of fitting about it because he was so class, wasn't he, when Foster came in?
Yeah.
He sort of dealt with that so well. So that's great to see. And the Super Mark Howard in goal song, and I just think that's really sweet for him, and fair play, good on him.
He's always come across as a good bloke, and a genuine professional. And I think his podcast shows that. And I just feel, when I heard that Foster was coming in, I thought, well, Howard's dead now. That'll finish him.
Yeah, totally.
How's he going to recover from that now? He's dropped down to National League level. He's lost his place. He comes back in when Langton's injured, has a rough game. Ben Foster immediately thrown into the club. And I thought, that's the end of him now. I mean, but I felt all last season, was his confidence quite there? I know I shouldn't say that. I don't like when people read body language or, try and assume about confidence. But I think I was right, because to bounce back like this is amazing. To bounce back, and his levels are higher than at any point, I think, last season. And I was quite happy with him last season. But he just looks sharp. He looks confident. He looks happy in his own skin, if you will, or happy in his all fluorescent highlighter kit. He's really on it. And people were talking about bringing another keeper in, and I think Okonkwo's got something, but there's no necessity to rush him into the side because Howard's looking rock solid, isn't he?
Yeah, it's a great story.
What we seem to forget is Howard played 33 games for us last season, hence we were where we were in the league.
Exactly.
But as you say, Mark, I think he's at another level again this season, and maybe Foster helped him with that. But you can see confidence oozing out of the team at the moment, across the pitch, defence, and we've got a good defence, and the defence have confidence in the keeper, then that shows on the pitch.
Absolutely right. I think as well that, like you were saying, Ian, about his reaction to Foster's arrival, was fabulous. That podcast between the two of them.
Yeah, that was an amazing pod, wasn't it? Yeah,
Incredible, isn't it? Really
yeah.
incredible. And I think that, you make your own luck. To have a mentality like that, like you say, Neil, whether he's learned from Foster or whatever it is, you need a really superb mentality to have been replaced like that and to bounce back stronger. It's a terrific resilience. It's terrific mentality, just in terms of, well, that whole story he told, didn't he, about I heard I was at his kids' performance in school.
Was
and
it
then
he was at a school event, wasn't he, or something? A Christmas school drama or something or other. Yeah.
But to respond by saying that's brilliant news because it'll help us win the league.
Yeah.
Great. And he clearly was not saying that to sound good. Because
I've covered sort of football for 15 years, for the papers, and I don't remember a kind of a reaction, quite like that. I mean, obviously some people are classier than others. Some people have got a bit of humility, others haven't. But I don't remember a kind of anything quite like that in terms of the way he the way he responded to that. I think it's, as you say, real class.
And especially for a goalkeeper where there's no way he's going to slot to another position.
Yeah.
He's got no way into the team. And when Foster agreed to carry on playing, he could have been just playing, EFL trophy games for next season. And he's past midway through the 30s, but yet there he is, being happy for it. I mean, I'm a failed goalkeeper, and I certainly wouldn't have reacted like that. I mean, I would constantly, poison the other goalkeeper's tea and things like that. I used to enjoy that sort of stuff. It was a godsend when they brought in traffic cameras, because I found that rather than actually, sort of poisoning people, I could actually make fake sort of pictures, alter the speed on it, and then get them locked up. And that was much, it's a lower impact.
I just never saw you as that Machiavellian type, really. But I mean, now it's all starting to fit together in my mind now, Mark.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Neil, you won't believe what happened to previous co-commentators with me. Maybe I shouldn't tell you about that, but you'll find out.
I'm sure I will. But I think going back to the team, and I think we've got to take our hats off and give credit to Parky for his recruitment, really. I think he's brought in the right kind of players, the right temperament. There's no prima donnas out there. And I think that's what's great about this team, that they are a team and they all play together. And I think that's all credit to Phil Parkinson for the players that he's actually brought into the club.
Yeah, absolutely right. And by the way, I did have a quick look, because you're saying about Fletcher, like what level of fitness could he get to?
Yeah.
And I am a little wary now, in that, Parkinson said before he came on for his debut that he was a little concerned he'd had so little pre-season he could actually get injured, just trying to get up to speed when he's nowhere near that yet. But encouragingly, last season he did start 35 games in the Scottish Premier League. So clearly it's not, I don't think it's a Glenn Little case of his legs have gone, but he can make contributions from the bench.
Yeah, that's good.
I think it's that once we get his pre-season legs in him, he should be able to be starting every week. So
that's encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll leave Grimsby behind for the moment. It's tragic to leave Grimsby behind, isn't it? Although I will say it's the only place I've ever been flashed walking down the waterfront from a victory at Grimsby. So, a double bonus. A hen party was walking up in the other direction. They seemed quite boisterous, and all I can say is one of them really, really was. But anyway,
I wish that had been sort of live on commentary, and I would like to. That would have gone viral. I mean, not the pictures I hasten to add, but your reaction would have been interesting.
The reverse angle would have been the angle to say. You know what? I'm realizing now, telling you that I have a vague recollection that I said something that I thought was brilliant, and I can't remember what it was, but I managed to be casual about it and just say something, I don't know, something so fabulous that it's gone out of my head completely. Just trust me.
But it was great at the time.
It was brilliant. It was brilliant. Yeah, absolutely.
Really.
We'll move on for that. And in a moment, we'll have a chat about the entry of the women's team to the top level of Welsh football.
I'm Mia Roberts, and this is Dragonheart.
welcome back, and we're going to have a chat about the Wrexham women's team. Had a historic day on Sunday and a fabulous day on Sunday as well. First game in the top level of Welsh football. I think it's fair to say that despite the brilliant performance of that team over the last 2 years, it was still a real step into the unknown, and facing a team like Swansea, who were always in the top two, who came second last year, who were playing in the Champions League last year, had Welsh internationals in the squad. There was a real sense of, okay, how big will this step up be? And the facts that we drew 3-3, and only because they scored a massively deflected shot in the 94th minute, I think says everything you need to know about the level of performance that we put in. We were 2-0 up with 15 minutes left, and it was absolutely terrific. It's a wonderful thing that the women's team is getting this injection, because quite frankly, I think there's scope for the women's team to be pulling Welsh women's football along with it, with the momentum that they've got behind them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the seemed to me that the sort of semi-professional, them going semi-pro was, was a really big development for them, and I think it could. There's a feeling that it could bring, a lot of other clubs in the northwest of England as well into play. Really, is, ones are going to have to, raise that bar as well, and as more clubs do, then, the ones who have will be able to sort of will be, there's a risk to the clubs who don't, that they'll lose their players. But fantastic, and I just sort of think some of those fixtures. I mean, some of my mates in South Wales are already talking about the Cardiff v Wrexham game down there. I know obviously the home game's up here, isn't it, in a couple of weeks? But we've had there obviously been some great games, within the level that we've been playing. But there's some real mouth-watering fixtures there, I think, and that it just really feels like the women's team advancing so well. And it must be Owen, who was there right at the outset in the WST days when they were just trying to start. It was the Supporters Trust who, wanted her to go into schools and begin to sort of give girls in Wrexham schools and perhaps a bit beyond a feel for, what playing football might look like for them. But it was a possibility, and it's just great for her that she's been there all the way through that, and now she sees us playing against the very best in the country.
Yeah, well-deserved reward to a lot of people who have done an awful lot of work above and beyond what you would expect them to do. And Gemma's a great example. And there's a nice localness about it, if you will. It's still a lot of the players locally based. There were 2 debutants on Sunday. There've been like 5 signings in the summer, which all were judicious. And I think all of them, when you look at their bona fides, you think, oh yeah, we're bringing in players who are used to playing at a higher level. And yet I can still say to a girl who was asking me in school on Monday about, just generally talking about the girls' team, and me saying, that woman who comes in and goes to coaching sessions in school, that's the woman in charge of Wrexham football, and she was really fascinated by that. There's there's a more human level, if you will, and it's great. The atmosphere at those games is fabulous. It's a different fan set, if you will, to the men's team. No, there's some overlap, obviously.
Yeah,
but it's just there's a real sense of positivity and localness, like I say, about it. There's a real community feel. It's very nice. It's pleasant.
It's great you're doing the commentaries as well. I think that's really good. That's really good. That will bring an awful lot more people in touch with that, I think. Great that you're doing that.
My hope, which we'll have to see, I just like to be able to give the same level of coverage of the women's team. So commentary, I did the podcasts. I'd like to have an equivalent of this show as well. I've chatted to Gemma about it as well, and she's very, very positive. So, but because we are a football club, we're not a football team, and the women's setup is a part of it. And I've got to say that's something the American fans, particularly, or North American fans, should I say, have been very keen on, because the MLS really plays second fiddle to the women's game in the States, and I think that they were a little confused as to why there wasn't the same level of coverage of the Wrexham women's team. Now, I think it was understandable, but now we're in the top division where there have to be facilities in place at all the grounds. It's a great chance to take advantage of that, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. some real mouth-watering fixtures
Ooh, yeah.
ahead. Really good. And also, you imagine that more and more of our players are going to be pushing in for the Wales team as well, and great to see. And a great standard of football. Really good.
Yeah, absolutely. There's only one player in the Welsh current squad who actually plays in the Welsh League, which is something that I'd love to see us be able to address. And
Yeah.
I think we could be the leaders in a lot of way in pulling Welsh women's football forwards, not least because Cardiff and Swansea would not like us being the upstarts that take it more seriously than them. And so
No, that's great. And I think that's all part of that process.
Yeah.
Once one team goes sort of semi-pro and gives those players a chance to have to work, on the day job less and spend more time committed to the actual football side, then everyone else wants to kind of, keep up with that. And I think that's the way it'll probably work, isn't it? Brilliant.
I think so. I mean, Neil, we were at the Connors Key game, weren't we? With that phenomenal crowd. And, it was a great atmosphere, great experience. It just shows that audience for the women's team, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely there, Mark. I mean, it was great. There was, lots of families there at the Connors Key game. And I didn't hear the crowd on Sunday, but there was a decent crowd there on Sunday for the first game. And just a shame they lost it to that equaliser, and it's so late on. I mean, they were dominating the game. I did watch it live on S4C, so I thought Wrexham dominated that game, and I missed out what actually happened to the Wrexham goalkeeper. That they were saying she had cramp, and hence they scored their second goal. But she must have been injured, I assume, because you wouldn't get cramp in a game when you're a goalkeeper, I wouldn't have thought. But yeah, it was such a tough first game for them, to be honest. But to come out with a 3-3 draw, but I'm sure those players would have thought that they've actually lost because they were so dominant, 2-0 up, then went 3-2 up after Swansea equalised, and a great advert for women's football in North Wales and in Wrexham. And if that's what we're going to look forward to the season, it's going to be a good season again for the women's team as well.
Well, strangely enough, actually, Del Morgan did have cramp initially, but that was about 10 minutes before the incident that made her go off the pitch. There were quite a few players getting cramp on both sides, and I think it was a combination of, although it's 4G, it was quite slick. There was quite heavy rain just around kickoff, and I think that did make just the going a little tougher. And then also there were 9 minutes added time in the first half, 11 in the second, and this all obviously links in with the whole point that FIFPro are making about added time. They played 110 minutes, first game of the season when they're probably not fully up and running, and they've got jobs to do as well. They'd returned semi-pro. And a lot of players on both teams looked very tired. We looked a bit more tired than them, and I think we just out of necessity sat a bit deep. But in terms of the actual injury, no, it looks to be a knee injury. I hope it's not too serious. It looked serious, and I think it was just that when she was kicking off, her knee went from under her. After the game, she was hobbling terribly badly. I mean, at one point, I felt hopeful because the team had a huddle. She was out there, and at one point, she was trying to do a bit of a stretch, and I thought, okay, that makes me think it is muscular or cramp rather than something serious. But then she was really hobbling. She could barely move.
Did they have a reserve keeper on, Mark, or was it an outfield player? They did.
So we bought a reserve keeper in the summer. So she got a bit of a surprise debut, but then she's unlucky. I mean, the second goal is a really good strike from the edge of the box.
Oh yeah,
and then the third one is an Andreas Bremen 1990 World Cup semi-final goal. And we just smashed it against the defender, went 20 feet up in the air in the opposite direction and dropped just under the bar, unsavable. She made a good save right at the end of the 10 minutes of added time, 11 minutes rather, at a player's feet, so we would have lost it. But it was a rotten way to make your debut, really, coming on like that. Yeah. But it was great. It was really enjoyable. Well done, Neil, for not mentioning Vuvuzelas when I mentioned that Connors Key match. You remember the Vuvuzela?
I certainly do. They were literally 10 foot away from us, weren't they?
Yeah, and we couldn't hear each other speak, could we?
And they were from Connors Key as well.
It was quite something. And we were getting quite grumpy in commentary. I'd always think, don't do that. Don't start, first world problems. Oh, I'm commentating on a football match,
Yeah,
but there's a noise in the background. I don't like that sort of thing at all. But it did drive me absolutely insane. Made me that was the most angry commentary I'd done since Steve Evans's Crawley came against Dean Saunders' collection of Premier League on loan teenagers, and they just systematically kicked Ryan Flynn. They took it in turns to kick him and kick him. It was so obvious what they're doing because they knew he was the good one. And I was so angry that I banged the desk when Ryan Flynn was cut in half by some hairy backsided 20-stone bloke. And the Crawley commentator next to me, he put my back up a little bit as well, if I'm honest with you. And Steve Evans as well. Don't get me started on Steve Evans.
No.
The Crawley manager, not the player, ex-Wrexham player.
Yeah.
And I was so annoyed at that challenge that I banged my desk really hard while commentating, probably a little bit too close to where he was set up than I should have. It wasn't pretty, and I'm not proud of it. And yet here I am telling everyone that I did it. I'm sorry. I'm praying for absolution there. Looking to further afield, and somehow, amazingly, not mentioning that Swansea's coach got stuck in the entrance of the car park and was only extricated in the 105th minute of the match. All the Wrexham players at the park in the street, I ended up being a traffic warden. That was quite an experience before the match. It's better than plugging all the equipment in. We've also got the Stockport game to look forward to as well on Saturday. Stockport got a good away result at MK Dons on Saturday as well, so it could be a bit tasty.
It's like a really good assessment of where we're at, doesn't it? Really, I mean, and there's sort of some symmetry, isn't it, I think, between us and them in that they started their first season back up in the league slightly sluggishly, didn't they? And I think there were changes in that squad as well, weren't there, when they went up? So, and it just really is almost like the signature game of that fixture, isn't it? Of that first Parky season, the trophy semi-final, the league game we won 3-0, in which we briefly thought we might catch up with them, and I suppose also I do remember being at that, the 2-1 away defeat where we scored early through Mullin and then just lost it, didn't we? Really. So there's a real sort of colour and significance about that fixture, isn't there? Now I think you could see us and them being, rivals for years to come, really.
Yeah, and throw Notts County into that mix too. It reminds me of when I was a kid in the 90s when you had Wrexham, Crewe, Stockport and Tranmere all upwardly mobile in the lower divisions. Real tasty games. But we'll be commentating that one, Neil. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, Mark, yeah. And then I think Stockport a little bit worried based on the number of tickets they've actually given us for this game. They've only given us about 900.
Yeah, they've not given us the space behind the goal, have they? Very surprising.
No. When they're saying that the home fans going there, well, the last game I saw them playing on television, that whole away end was empty.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and there was a Stockport fan on social media today complaining, Wrexham can only bring 900 fans, not knowing that, that's all that we've been given, which I think is a real, are we going to give them the same treatment when they come to Wrexham? I don't know.
I mean, there was quite a lot. I do remember there was a lot of trouble after that game. There were some really bad scenes involving our fans, it should be said, around that big roundabout near the ground, and there were there were some scenes with the police there, really ugly scenes. So I don't know whether that comes into play at all, but there was a minority that day who didn't really cover themselves in glory. It has to be said.
And the same has happened at Stockport previously, but well, let's hope we cover ourselves in glory on and off the pitch on Saturday.
Really hope so. Yeah.
Well, we better wrap it up, chaps. Time is running out. So can I just say, Ian, thank you so much for joining it. Else, it's been an absolute pleasure. Really has.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me on. I love the stuff you do. So it's a real privilege to be on. Thank you.
And thank you, Neil, for not mentioning. And just like that, the time limit kicked in on our Zoom call, because never let it be said that I'm a generous man. I'm a skinflint and I'm not paying extra for those unlimited Zoom call things, and normally I get away with it, but on this time I'm afraid my shameful love of money and my lack of professionalism has been exposed. Never ever accuse me of being professional, because I am not and I never will be. So with the final score of Ian Herbert 1, Neil Williams 1, Mark Griffiths 1. This is Dragonheart. I don't know what that 1-1-1 thing meant, but like I said, I've never been professional, I am not professional, and I never will be.
I'm Tommy Couse, and this is Dragonheart. There you go.